Let me tell you something, a mature woman doesn't beg for love. She doesn't chase it. She doesn't negotiate her value, and she sure doesn't sit around trying to convince a man to see what she already knows about herself. A mature woman has lived enough to understand one thing clearly: love is not something you force. It's something that flows. If she has to beg for your time, your attention, your loyalty, then what she's begging for isn't love. It's permission to stay in a place she's already outgrown. You see, a mature woman has been through disappointments, heartbreaks, and lessons that cost her peace. And after all of that, she learned the most powerful truth of her life. Her worth is not up for debate. She knows exactly who she is, and she knows that the right man will recognize that without needing a reminder every day. Love should never require begging, and that truth becomes clearer the more life teaches you what real love feels like. When a woman reaches a stage of maturity, she understands that anything she has to beg for is already beneath the value she carries inside her. She has lived enough, experienced enough, and grown enough to recognize that begging is not love, it is desperation. And a mature woman is not desperate. She is aware. She is aware of the difference between being chosen and being tolerated, between being appreciated and being used, between being cared for and being convenient. A mature woman knows that if she has to plead for someone's attention, then what she is actually pleading for is a role in a story that was never meant to honor her. She sees that love, the kind that truly matters, is something that blooms naturally, without force and without manipulation. She has learned that begging for love strips the soul of dignity, and dignity is something she refuses to surrender again. She understands that the moment she has to chase someone's affection, she is abandoning the love she owes to herself. She knows the silent pain of giving her all to the wrong person. The kind of pain that teaches patience, teaches self-respect, and teaches her to stop pouring into someone who never holds out a cup. She remembers the nights she stayed awake wondering what she did wrong, when the truth was never about her shortcomings, but about someone else's inability to love. Those experiences shaped her into a woman who now understands that the heart can break, but it can also learn. And once it learns, it becomes powerful. A mature woman recognizes the signs early. She sees when a man's effort is fading, when his words are hollow, when his promises are just emotional bait. She doesn't beg him to return to the man he used to pretend to be. She doesn't beg him to change, to listen, to care, or to try harder. She knows that if a man wants to love her, he will. If he wants to keep her, he will. If he wants to stay loyal, he will. There is no confusion, no guessing, no begging required. She knows that asking for basic respect, time, affection, or loyalty turns love into a negotiation. And real love never feels like a contract. Real love feels like commitment, like comfort, like someone showing up without being asked 1,000 times. She refuses to beg for what she deserves because she now understands that begging is the fastest way to lose yourself. And she has worked too hard to find herself to ever go back to that place again. A mature woman has learned to walk away not because she is cold, but because she is wise. She knows the difference between holding on and holding herself back. She understands that letting go is sometimes the most loving thing she can do for herself. Walking away is not giving up. It is choosing herself over someone who never chose her fully. It is choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over confusion, and truth over illusions. She no longer fears being alone because solitude taught her value. It taught her that her worth does not depend on whether someone loves her. Her worth is there even when no one recognizes it. And because of that, she does not beg. She simply opens the door for anyone who fails to appreciate her, and she lets them leave without asking them to stay. A mature woman values her peace more than temporary attention because she has lived long enough to understand the cost of letting the wrong energy into her life. There comes a point where a woman realizes that attention is cheap, effortless, and available to anyone who wants to give it. But peace is rare. Peace is earned. Peace is something she cannot afford to lose again, not after all the chaos she has survived. She knows what it feels like to have her heart pulled in directions that never led anywhere, to be surrounded by noise that looked like love but sounded like confusion. And after going through that, she understands that nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth disturbing the calm she built within herself. She has learned that some people only offer attention when it benefits them. They show up with sweet words, quick messages, and little moments that feel exciting but mean nothing in the long run. They know how to appear at the right time, but never stay long enough to be reliable. A younger woman might mistake that for love, for interest, for something real, but a mature woman sees through it instantly. She knows temporary attention is a performance, not a commitment. She knows that anyone can make her feel wanted for a moment, but only someone who truly values her will bring consistency, stability, and respect. Her peace is something she fought hard to create. She has been through emotional storms that left her exhausted, drained, and questioning her worth. She remembers what it felt like to constantly check her phone waiting for someone who never cared enough to reply. She remembers the anxiety of trying to impress someone who only saw her as an option. She remembers losing sleep over people who slept peacefully without thinking about her. These memories may not define her, but they taught her. They taught her that peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of clarity, self-respect, and emotional safety. A mature woman no longer gets carried away by flattery or temporary affection. She pays attention to how a person treats her when the excitement fades, when life gets real, when consistency is required. She trusts her instincts because life taught her to. She knows when something feels off, when someone is not being honest, when a connection is shallow. And instead of trying to fix it, she steps back. She protects her space because she understands that emotional chaos always starts small. One unanswered question, one inconsistency, one broken promise. She is no longer willing to accept anything that threatens her well-being. Temporary attention can be addictive, but a mature woman is no longer hungry for validation. She doesn't need someone to tell her she's beautiful to believe it. She doesn't need constant compliments to feel valued. She doesn't need half-hearted interest to feel important. The love she gives herself is far stronger than the moments of attention someone else gives her. She has learned to appreciate solitude, to recharge in her own company, and to thrive even when no one is watching. She understands that peace is not something other people give her. It is something she maintains by choosing wisely. She chooses relationships that feel calm, friendships that feel supportive, and connections that feel genuine. She avoids situations that drain her, arguments that lead nowhere, and people who only show up when they need something. She values quality over excitement, depth over charm, and honesty over flattery. A mature woman has outgrown the desire to be chosen by everyone. Now she only wants to be surrounded by people who bring peace, not problems, clarity, not confusion, presence, not empty attention. And because of that, she guards her peace like a treasure, because to her, it truly is one. A mature woman understands her worth and refuses to negotiate her value because she has already spent too much of her life trying to be enough for people who could not see her. She has reached a point where she no longer waits for someone else to validate what she already knows deep inside. She is deserving of love, respect, loyalty, effort, and honesty. She knows these things are not luxuries, they are basic requirements. And because she knows that she does not accept excuses disguised as explanations or apologies that come without change. She has learned that anyone who truly values her will never make her feel like she needs to earn their love. When a woman becomes mature in her heart and mind, she stops explaining why she deserves better. She stops trying to justify her standards or soften her expectations just to make someone more comfortable. She no longer dims her light to make insecure people feel brighter, nor does she shrink herself to avoid being too much. She knows that if someone calls her standards too high, it usually means their effort is too low. She knows her worth is not up for negotiation, not because she thinks she is perfect, but because she knows she brings peace, loyalty, care, and emotional stability into the lives of those she loves. She has lived through experiences that forced her to rebuild herself piece by piece. She has cried tears no one saw, survived disappointments no one understood, and healed wounds she never thought she would recover from. And every time she stitched her broken pieces back together, she gained strength. Every time she pulled herself out of a situation where she was undervalued, she sharpened her understanding of who she is. That's why she doesn't allow anyone to treat her like she is replaceable. She knows the love she gives is rare, powerful, and deeply meaningful, and she refuses to let anyone take advantage of that. A mature woman does not chase people who show her she is not a priority. She does not beg for the bare minimum or try to convince someone to treat her the way she deserves. She knows the right person will recognize her value without needing reminders. She no longer tries to prove her worth through overgiving or overloving. Instead, she observes. She watches how a person shows up, how they speak, how they act when it matters. She pays attention to consistency, responsibility, and kindness. And if she senses that her value is being questioned, she distances herself without hesitation. She has learned that negotiating her worth only leads to resentment, heartbreak, and self-betrayal. When she lowers her standards, she loses pieces of herself. When she allows disrespect, she teaches others how to treat her. When she settles, she silences the voice inside her that knows she is meant for more. She refuses to repeat those cycles because maturity taught her that loving someone should not require sacrificing her dignity. She understands that her worth comes from her character, her resilience, her compassion, and her strength, not from another person's approval. She walks with confidence, not arrogance, with grace, not fear. She knows who she is, what she brings, and what she will never tolerate again. She does not fear losing someone who cannot see her value. Instead, she fears losing herself while trying to make someone else comfortable. So she chooses herself, not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. And because she knows her worth, she becomes a woman who is no longer controlled by disappointment, no longer shaken by rejection, and no longer defined by anyone else's inability to love her properly. A mature woman has learned that actions speak louder than any words someone can ever say, and because of that, she no longer gets impressed by promises, sweet talk, or temporary displays of affection. She has lived long enough to understand that anyone can talk beautifully, anyone can say the right things in the moment, and anyone can sound honest when they want something. But actions reveal the truth. Actions show commitment, loyalty, and sincerity. Actions show who someone really is. And a mature woman pays attention to what people do, not what they claim they feel. She has been through situations where she trusted words that were never supported by real effort. She remembers believing in promises that slowly faded, plans that never happened, and declarations of love that fell apart the moment things got difficult. Those experiences taught her that consistency is the real language of love. Consistency is what makes a person trustworthy. Consistency is what proves intention. The man who truly cares will not just say, "I'm here for you." He will show it in how he treats her, how he shows up, how he respects her time and emotions. A mature woman has learned to look for patterns, not moments. She doesn't get excited because someone acted right one day. She pays attention to how he behaves on the days when he's busy, tired, frustrated, or distracted. Anyone can be good temporarily. Anyone can show effort at the beginning. But when the excitement fades, when the newness wears off, when real life begins, she watches if the effort remains. She no longer confuses attention with intention. She no longer confuses attraction with commitment. She no longer confuses a connection with a future. She knows that love isn't built on big romantic gestures once in a while. It's built on small actions every day, showing up on time, keeping promises, remembering what matters to her, and respecting her boundaries. The right man doesn't have to be pushed or reminded to be consistent. he chooses to be. And she has learned that if a man is inconsistent, it is not because he is confused, busy, or complicated. It is because she is not a priority to him. And a mature woman no longer stays where she is not a priority. She understands that people treat you according to what they truly feel, not what they say. If he cares, he will show it. If he wants her, he will pursue her with clarity, not mixed signals. If he values her, he will protect the relationship instead of playing games. And she is no longer interested in being someone's emotional convenience. She does not have time for half love or half effort. She needs authenticity. She needs someone who shows up with the same energy he expects from her. Because she has seen how unstable words can be, she trusts consistency more than compliments. She knows that charm can fool the eyes, but repeated behavior never lies. She watches how he reacts when she needs support, how he treats her when no one is watching, how he handles conflict, how he behaves when he doesn't get his way. Those moments tell her everything she needs to know. She has learned that true character shows during difficulty, not during comfort. A mature woman no longer allows herself to be blinded by potential. She doesn't fall for maybes, or someday, or I'll try. She needs clear choices, clear behavior, and clear commitment. She knows a man who loves her will be consistent in effort, consistent in communication, and consistent in respect. And because she understands her worth, she walks away from anyone who cannot match that consistency. A mature woman has learned that walking away from the wrong person is not a sign of weakness, but a powerful act of self-respect. She understands that staying with someone who cannot value her is more damaging than being alone. She knows that holding on to someone who does not appreciate her only delays the healing she deserves. She has lived through relationships where she stayed longer than she should have, hoping things would improve, believing that love alone would fix everything, thinking that her loyalty would inspire change. But experience taught her that loyalty to the wrong person is the quickest way to lose herself. So now, when she sees the signs, when her spirit feels unsettled, when her instincts whisper that something is not right, she listens. She walks away with grace, not anger, because she knows she is choosing her own well-being. She doesn't walk away because she no longer cares. She walks away because she cares too much about her peace, her dignity, and her future. She knows that love is not supposed to feel like begging for attention or fighting for basic respect. It is not supposed to feel like confusion, stress, or constant doubt. She has learned that real love brings clarity, not chaos. Real love makes room for her, not excuses. Real love lifts her, not drains her. And when she realizes she is in a relationship that does none of those things, she chooses herself. She steps back from the person who shows her inconsistency, mixed signals, or half-hearted effort, because she knows she deserves a love that is steady and real. Walking away was not always easy for her. There was a time when she feared being alone more than she feared staying unhappy. There was a time when she believed that walking away meant giving up. But life taught her differently. Life showed her that the real loss is staying with someone who cannot see her value. The real pain is betraying herself to keep someone else comfortable. The real failure is abandoning her own needs to hold on to someone who never showed up for her. That realization changed her. It made her stronger, wiser, and more protective of her heart. She understands now that walking away is not the end. It is the beginning of healing and growth. It is the moment she chooses to stop shrinking for someone who doesn't know how to love her. It is the moment she decides to break a cycle that was draining her strength. It is the moment she reclaims her power. She knows that every time she walks away from the wrong person, she walks closer to the right one. She is no longer interested in proving her worth to anyone. She is no longer willing to stay in spaces where she feels unseen. She is no longer willing to fight alone for a relationship that requires two hearts, not one. Walking away means she finally understands her heart is not a place for temporary people. It is not a place for inconsistent love. It is not a place for someone who shows up only when it is convenient. She needs someone who chooses her consistently, not occasionally. Someone who stands beside her, not behind excuses. Someone who matches her effort, not takes advantage of it. She knows that when she leaves the wrong person, she opens space for the right love to find her. So she walks away not with bitterness, but with peace. She knows she made the right choice. She knows she honored herself. And she knows that the kind of love she deserves will never require her to sacrifice her worth. When a woman finally understands her worth, something inside her shifts so deeply that she becomes impossible to replace and unstoppable in her purpose. She moves through life with a kind of quiet strength that cannot be shaken by anyone's lack of appreciation. She stops waiting for people to choose her, stops hoping someone will see her value, and stops breaking herself into pieces just to fit into someone else's small world. She realizes that the moment she recognizes her own value, the world around her must adjust. She no longer lives for approval. She no longer seeks validation. She no longer measures her worth by how much someone loves her, stays with her, or talks about her. She knows her worth is something she carries within, something she earned through every battle, heartbreak, lesson, and triumph. A woman who knows her worth walks into a room differently. She no longer competes with anyone. She doesn't worry about who likes her or who doesn't. She doesn't chase friendships that feel forced or relationships that drain her energy. She understands that what is meant for her will never require her to suffer emotionally to keep it. She trusts that the right people will show up with the right intentions. She understands that peace, respect, and loyalty are not optional. They are the foundation of every meaningful connection in her life. She becomes more selective, not because she is arrogant, but because she finally realizes her energy is precious. She doesn't invest in people who show her the bare minimum. She doesn't give chances to someone who repeatedly shows patterns of inconsistency and emotional immaturity. She no longer entertains situations where she must question her importance. She knows that the moment she has to wonder where she stands, she already has her answer. And because of that, she no longer settles for being an option when she deserves to be a priority. A woman who knows her worth also learns how to set boundaries without guilt. She knows that boundaries are not walls. They are doors that filter who deserves access to her heart and her peace. She says no without fear. She walks away without hesitation. She speaks up without trembling. She doesn't apologize for protecting herself because she knows her heart is a sacred place that should only be shared with those who treat it with care. She honors her emotions, her time, and her needs. She has learned that the love she gives to others must also be the love she gives to herself. She becomes a woman who doesn't collapse under disappointment. She understands that rejection is not a reflection of her worth, but a redirection towards something better. She doesn't break when someone leaves. She adjusts, she learns, and she grows. She knows she cannot lose what is meant for her, and she cannot keep what isn't. This understanding gives her a level of emotional freedom that makes her powerful. She is no longer controlled by fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of starting over. She knows she can rebuild her life at any moment because strength is something she carries, not something she borrows. And because she knows her worth, she attracts differently. She attracts relationships built on mutual respect. She attracts opportunities aligned with her purpose. She attracts peace instead of problems. She attracts people who value her presence instead of taking her for granted. She becomes magnetic, not because she tries to be, but because confidence and self-respect radiate from her naturally. A woman who understands her worth walks into her future with courage, knowing that everything she desires will meet her halfway.